We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer. You know, the other day a book fell and hit me on the head. I've only got my shelf to blame. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at G.I. Joe Battle of the Arctic Circle. This is from Renegade Game Studios. It is essentially powered by Axis and Allies. This is, if we take Axis and Allies and we take G.I. Joe and we put them together, maybe play a little soft music, maybe an Italian meal, they get home, they get a little friendly. This is what is produced from that matchup there. So I am, first of all, when I was a kid, I was a huge G.I. Joe fan. I was telling Ray I had like a ton of the toys and what have you. And then, of course, as I got older, I loved Axis and Allies. It was a great game. And I was really excited when I heard that Renegade Game Studios was going to do this. So basically, just as an overview, it's a Battle of the Arctic Circle. And essentially, you have four factions. You have Cobra Commander and Destro are a team. You have Admiral Keel-haul and Snowjob are a team. And they are working together, each of the teams working together to capture various points on the board that are, hexes on the board that are worth victory points. But they each have their own bases, and then they have like a combined base. And so what you're going to do every round is you are essentially going to take all of add up your bases, if you have any VP hexes you control, and if you have any points you've left over from the last term, you're going to add those together, and you can buy with them. You can purchase vehicles. Your vehicles here are, of course, infantry. You've got like the Snowcat and the Wolf, I think, for Cobra. Yep. They're like, tanks. You've got the Sky Striker and the Rattlers, your air power. You both have similar aircraft carriers and similar cruisers. Your aircraft carriers can carry 2 air units. Your cruisers can carry 2 land units. But essentially, of course, they all have stats. They all have how far they can go, how much they can carry, how much they cost, what their attack values and defense values are. So if you play basic Axis and Allies, you're going to know how these units work and the interactions. But you go ahead, you purchase them, you set them off to the side, you do your combat actions, you start moving your figures to different locations on the board within their movement range, to attack your enemy. Then you're going to go to combat. You essentially are trying to roll at a certain number or beneath a certain number to score a hit. Everything takes 1 hit to go off the board, except for the carriers. They can take 2 hits. But even units that are removed in that line of combat, they still get to respawn because combat is simultaneous before they're removed from the game. Then if you take over one of these victory point spots, you place your marker there, you move up on the score track. After that, you can do your non-combat movements. You can begin to move units that did not participate in combat within their movement abilities to different places on the board. And then you place the units that you bought at the beginning of the turn. You can place them in your bases. Now, there are stacking limits. In bases, you can have up to 12 units. Every other hex, you can have up to 8 units. But those stacking limits are formed, and you do need to check them at the end of every round. Essentially, there are 3 different scenarios. The first scenario, which is what we played, goes up to 7 rounds. Whoever has the most points at the end of the 7 rounds wins, or prior to that, if anybody gets a total of 10 points in that first scenario, they win immediately, or if they capture an enemy base at any time, they win immediately. So there's some variation there on the victory points. But let's go ahead and jump into the review. Ray, what did you think of G.I. Joe Battle of the Arctic Circle?
So, I've never really played much in the way of Axis and Allies. I think we played Axis and Allies in Europe, 1940.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we played that a few months back, and that was actually my first foray into Axis and Allies. And it's a little bit different game. It's not something I've ever played before. It's different than anything I've ever played before.
And you really don't come from a war gamer background, dude.
I'm not.
Right?
I never have been. I
Right.
just never really have been. So I thought it was a good game. I think the design of Axis and Allies is absolutely fantastic, but it's just nothing that's been in my wheelhouse. But now this really excited me when it came out, because from what I saw is I saw it as Axis and Allies, but I saw it more as a simplified version, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's something that was easier for me to get into. One of my things that I've always disliked about Axis and Allies is there's so much on the map that all the pieces and everything don't fit in the spaces they need to fit
right,
into.
right, right.
Whereas in this, because they actually use hexes, it fits
Mhm.
a lot better, and it does a really good job as far as not overloading the different hexes, unless you're going into a big battle.
Right, right, and that is something that is quite a bit different. Whoa, there we go.
You knew that was
This
gonna
is
happen.
something that is quite a bit different from regular Axis and Allies, and that is in regular Axis and Allies, you do have kind of the spaces that conform to kind of geographic points around the world. Now here, you've got the Arctic Circle, and you do have like clearly Greenland and Iceland, and the top of Russia and whatnot, but the borders are not geographic borders or areas. Instead, they are very much just the hexes.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a different take on Axis and Allies. I think it worked here. I think for because there was one of the great things about Axis and Allies with those different regions is you're always looking for, well, what's adjacent, and sometimes those borders, they look like they're adjacent but they're not.
Right.
And here you kind of clearly knew what touched what went where. So I think that was a very easy and digestible thing to just see instantly where you are on the board. What did you think about the way the different factions worked? Because they each had some special abilities, right?
They did. So the factions were actually really nice. I like the fact that they weren't so much the same. Now a lot of their combat values and stuff like that were close. I know the battle cruisers and the aircraft carriers; those ones were identical for both sides.
For both sides, yeah.
Right, but everything else was a little bit different. A little bit better on movement, worse on movement, a little bit better for attacker or defensive. And plus the special abilities. Each faction, I think, stood out on its own.
Yeah.
So you could definitely see the difference, and you could definitely see how each one of them played, and you had to learn to play to their strengths.
And one of the things Cobra has the ability to put out like sheets of ice to turn water areas into land areas, which can block naval movement, but you can move land troops across it. And then the Joes have or I guess even the Cobra could essentially attack those ice blocks to try to get through it.
Yeah, you can bust through them.
Yeah. But with regard to the individual commanders, like Cobra Commander and Destro and Snowjob and Keel-haul, they each had their own special thing. Like Snowjob could move he had ski troops. His infantry can move 2 instead of 1. Keel-haul can deploy units directly to places that had a cruiser, land units places that had a cruiser, or a air unit to an aircraft carrier. What was Cobra had to deal during combat?
During combat, he can basically kamikaze one of his guys, remove it to do 1 point to your opponent. So that way, at the beginning of the round, so that way you're at least getting rid of some additional point. You're guaranteed to do at least 1 point of damage.
Yeah.
And then what was the other one? It was the wolves. The wolves. You can actually
that was their own ability. But Destro's ability was, what was his ability?
I don't remember now.
I can't remember. I'm gonna look. It's gonna kill me. So that you can see we had that propped up with a drink. So no, Destro's ability is here he is. Okay. So Destro's ability is your units have a +1 attack versus hexes with 6 or more defending Joes in them. Yeah. So he had an attack ability there.
Yeah. So he really wanted to go after the areas that were
heavily populated,
stuff like that.
So like I said, there were with the abilities you mentioned. You're like Wolf, your tanks. They had that like sneak attack ability where they could lower their attack rating at the beginning of the round, fire, and any casualties that you sustained immediately are off the board. I like too how the Rattlers and the Sky Strikers work, because Sky Strikers were clearly better. They could move 4 spaces. They had attack and defend of 4, whereas the Rattlers, they could only move 3 spaces. I think their attack or defense was less.
They were attack 3, but they were defend 4.
They were defend 4, yeah.
Yeah.
But the Rattlers had vertical takeoff and land, so they had more options to land places where like they could land in victory point hex places. They couldn't claim them. They couldn't take them over, but they could land there. Sky Strikers were a little bit more limited with where they could land. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, I like this game. I'll tell you right now, I like this game. I had a heck of a lot of fun with it. My one thing I'd like to see with this, and I get the impression, and I certainly hope it's true, that they're going to make more of these kind of G.I. Joe games, different battles from G.I. Joe lore, because this was clearly when they were going after the Weather Dominator in, I think it was the 2nd series they did. One thing I really think might be fun is if they introduced some kind of card play into this, which is not strictly Axis and Allies, but then neither is this. But it'd be kind of fun if you had some little abilities that throughout the game you might be able to play. I don't know, something like that might be fun. Maybe that's just a little too much for some people, but I get it, and maybe make it an optional thing. You wouldn't have to use it if you didn't want to, but I'd get a kick out of that. Just a little more spice and sugar. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
No, I mean, I think something like that would be all right. In a way, I mean, there's part of me that I like it just kind of the way it is because I like it more as an introduction to Axis and Allies.
Okay.
It's a little more on the simplified side.
Mhm.
I actually found it easier for me to learn and play this one than Axis and Allies Europe.
For sure.
so-
Yeah, no
So
question.
that's
This is a more of a gateway game.
right.
For,
And for me, that's what I like about this because Axis and Allies it's big, it's heavy, it's drawn out. And I mean, I used to hear about friends of mine that would play the game for 8 hours plus
Yeah.
or whatever. They'd set it up, they'd play all day, and then they'd go to bed, come back the next day, and they'd finish up the game.
yeah.
We finished this in an hour and a half.
Yeah. Well, what's cool is you've got that 7-round tracker, right? And we
Yes.
didn't even get to the end of it. But
No, you murdered me like in 4 rounds.
I'm sorry. but I like that you do have a timer, so this is not going to be a runaway game here. And really too. What's interesting is the way it uses area control, because to me this feels like an area control combat game, right?
Very much.
And it's good. I think it does it very well. I love the theme. I thought gameplay was very fun. It was very quick. It
was.
moves quick, you know.
Turns were way faster in this than regular Axis.
I think
Allies.
so, because you're not juggling as much
Yes.
in your head, and you don't have as many strategic options. So it's a much lighter game, but that means it's faster, it's ferocious. It felt more like a knife fight in a phone booth than typical Axis and Allies.
Totally.
And I liked it. I had a lot of fun with it. Now, we've just played the game once, but I don't see my opinion changing. I think this is a great, light, fun intro to Axis and Allies with a great theme that I really dig. Like I say, I think it'd be fun if they introduce a little more bells and whistles and subsequent designs. Mm-hmm. But having said that, I think this game is awesome. That's my opinion. So again, with our going with our scale of 1 to 10 rating system for our shared reviews here, Ray, what do you think? Scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about G.I. Joe Battle for the Arctic Circle, powered by Axis and Allies?
For me, Axis and Allies, this game, I think it's a great game. So I don't think my rating is going to necessarily do what the game is, but it's about a 7 for me.
Okay.
It's if somebody asked to play, I would play it, but it's not one that Axis and Allies is never a game that I would actually really recommend. However, saying that, the difference between this one and regular Axis and Allies is I want to play this one 4-player.
That's true.
Because regular Axis and Allies, I think primarily from what I've played, is a good 2-player game, or the downtime is just going to be horrible for you.
Yeah.
This one, your turns are so fast. As a 4-player game, I think this game would be better. I think I can see this game jumping up to a 7.5, maybe even an 8 as a 4-player game.
Because I got to tell you, I really enjoyed it as a 2-player. This one, I agree, it might be better as a 4-player. Maybe that's something we'll have to revisit with this one.
Totally.
I think right now, as it stands, I'm probably a 7.5, bordering on an 8. I'll say 7.5 for now. I can't see that going down. It may go up the more I play it, but that's where I stand right now. Yeah. So that is our review for G.I. Joe Battle of the Arctic Circle, powered by Axis and Allies. This is Renegade Game Studios. Please leave a comment here on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on discriminatinggamer.com. Like us, subscribe, follow, join, all those things. We really appreciate it. Please check out my other channel, Cody Carlson, PhD. And if you do like the kind of stuff we provide here, please feel free to click on the Super Thanks button and leave a tip. You know, I recently heard that another Red Lobster is closed down. I guess their business is floundering. Please somebody help me on my feet again. And I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band. He'll never give up, he'll stay till the fight's won. G.I. Joe will dare. G.I. real American hero. G.I. Joe will dare.